Welcome back to Insert Art. So in one of our recent videos, a lot of people in the comments were mentioning that the watercolors that we used were terrible, basically. They were super unprofessional. They were like
student quality watercolors.
Yeah, let's go with that. So instead of buying some really professional art materials, we have decided to go backwards and we will be using Crayolas today. Yeah. So Jazza went through the warehouse and picked out the most childish art supplies that he could find. First, we've got this huge, very colourful briefcase. Oh my God, this smells so much like crayons.
It does. You open it, it just kind of goes.
I really hope they're not like toxic or anything.
Well, actually, no, my husband has put one up his nose as a child. And he survived,
yes.
so, you know. And that was in the 90s, so they were probably worse then than they are now.
Have you seen that episode in The Simpsons where Homer like shoves crayons up his nose?
Yes. Oh, I forgot about that.
15, 16. Woohoo!
Hey, what's that?
I'd forgotten all about that episode.
So as well as our classic Crayola crayons, we've got an airbrush and we've got a sprayer, which I'm not sure what the difference is, but we are going to find out.
I think one is like by hand and one is... Oh no, it's kid powered. So we've got a kid.
That's why we brought Ash in today. This one comes with some colouring pages, so I think we're going to have a little bit of a test, a little bit of a dabble before we dive into some really epic artworks.
Try and do something really serious
with some kids' material.
Subpar. So we ended up using 2 different airbrush systems.
Yes, and they were so inconsistent. Every time you used it, I felt like we were getting a different result. Sometimes it would come out really like splattery, and sometimes it would come out very smooth, and sometimes it wouldn't come out at all and it would just bubble and explode. There was even one time where my marker just completely flew out of the device. All right, if I just make sure that the pen's in properly. Watch this, Ash. So for my dabble as well, I went straight in with the airbrush and soon discovered that it was super unreliable. It took me lots of pumping and so many tries to get the pen in the right position and to get it from the right distance from the paper, and all these tiny little factors just changed the outcome of it every single time that I used it. I practiced a little bit of stenciling with my chameleon, and I even tried to mix some colours, but I soon found out that you can't layer lighter colours over darker ones. So after learning to hold the airbrush much farther away from the paper to get a more even sort of coat, I tried it again on the leaf of the picture and I think it turned out much better. We also even remembered that there were some stencils in the 2 kits, which I had absolutely forgotten about but made such a big difference. So I just put a stencil over the little bug and suddenly spray painting the leaf became so much easier.
So I got really into my head that I really wanted to do gradients with the spray, thinking that like that would be the easiest way to use it, and like you could set cool textures in and all that sort of stuff. And so I was sort of masking off areas, and I don't think I did a good job at all.
It looked pretty good to me. It was kind of giving like sunset colours. And I think we soon discovered that mixing the different colours was not really an option because it just turned out sort of muddy, and...
We both really wanted to though, like it was just like our go-to, like, no, I can mix that.
Yeah.
No. I think that's sort of the most of what I experimented with, was just trying to do gradients and textures with the airbrush. And then I sort of just decided to jump in with the limited knowledge of what didn't work for me.
Now that we've both had a little bit of a play with these very unfamiliar materials, we were ready to jump into something a little more substantial.
So coming in today, I knew using Crayola was going to be super colourful and maybe a little bit unpredictable and very textural as well. And that made me think of Impressionist art like Claude Monet. So as an ode to Claude Monet, one of my favourite artists of all time, I was thinking about doing water lilies or lily pads or some kind of landscape. But I also wanted to add a character just to have something to focus on and hone in on. So with that in mind, as well as the really speckly texture that the airbrush produced, I settled on drawing a frog sitting on a lily pad. But he's not just any frog, he's a wizard frog. My next step, I used a lot of stencils and a lot of masking just to try and manage the unpredictability and the soft edge of the airbrush. So once I had the main areas of colour mapped out, it was at this point where I decided to introduce some more materials into my art process. So I tried layering some crayons with some markers, which sort of gave gave the same bleaching effect that Kat was talking about with her stars, and also just some simple crayons to get some richer colours and some more texture. After layering and layering, I quickly got very concerned about how many colours that I was using. I was worried it was getting a little bit muddy, just trying to combine all these different colours, and it wasn't turning out as bright as I was hoping it to be. So I just kept going with more bright and unexpected colours.
I think you did a really good job. I think you're being a bit hard on yourself with your colour selection.
Thank you.
Using contrasting colours to dictate how the form came through. So
Yeah.
I think you did well.
And last but not least, I used the white gel pen as well, just to rescue a few of the areas that were a little bit too dark that I couldn't restore with the crayons or any other medium. I used it just to add a few highlights to the eyes and add a little bit of shine and wetness to get that frog sort of texture. So after using every single art medium in the book, I was finally ready to call this done, and I ended up being pretty happy with it, I think.
I think he did a good job. I think he's nice and polished. He looks like he's sort of, he's got a little world that he lives in. He's sort of grounded in that world. I think you did a really good job on him.
Yeah, I think he's the herbologist of the pond.
I think he looks nice and finished.
Thank you.
So chat gave me a really good idea. They were sort of talking about how galaxies would be really fun to use the airbrush for, and I thought the textures would be really fun for that as well. So I sort of started with that and thought about what I wanted to be in my galaxy, and a little astronaut space fox popped into my head.
That's awesome.
I sketched him out and I was really happy with the sketch, and then I was absolutely terrified to actually touch him with anything because I knew I didn't trust any of the mediums that we were using. So I ended up trying to keep a really limited colour palette because I was worried that I know me and I'm just going to keep throwing things at it in the hopes that it's going to work, and it never does. So I thought if I limited my colour palette at the very least, not so much could go wrong in that aspect. I tried to circumvent the fact that I didn't think I could keep any of the airbrushing within the lines, and wanted to make my fox sort of like a glowy space fox, and then at least that way, all of the splatter that was not in the lines is meant to be there. Absolutely, totally meant to be there. So while we were playing with our mediums at the start, we discovered that if we put crayon underneath the spray, then it sort of repelled the ink and sort of showed through. So I decided that was going to be part of my galaxy scheme. I was going to do all the stars and stuff in crayon and then put sort of like the blue ink over the top and wipe it off, and it did not work. It kind of just smudged over the top. So as you can hear in the background here, Ash came to the rescue, and we realized that baby wipes actually help remove it from the crayon areas. So I used that and then accidentally smudged some of the ink with it, and there was a really cool texture that that made. So I leaned into that and used that a lot.
I think that's what Bob Ross would call a happy accident.
Yes, definitely a happy accident. So after that, I decided I've done the crayons, I've done the ink, I'm done with both of those. I'm going to try and save it with the pencils.
Yes,
and
that's what they're there for.
Yes, get some details in with the pencils. So I decided to do all of my sort of final details, outlining, refining, all of that jazz with the pencils. And I think it saved it a little bit, but it still felt to me like something was still missing from the final product.
I think I know what it is.
White gel pen! Yeah, I added quite a bit of highlighting and trying to sort of make things pop with the white highlights. I think it saved it a little bit. So I think the final product, it had all the fun of experimentation, but I can see where it could have been better.
That's kind of what you want when you're playing with children's art mediums. You kind of want to be a little bit experimental and a little bit imperfect. So I think you nailed it.
Thank you. So that was a lot of fun and extremely frustrating.
Yeah, oh my God.
All at the same time.
We got to work with so many different mediums and practice combining them and layering them.
And working out what worked and what didn't. And
Yeah.
what shot at our faces out of the thing. And
But that's kind of the point of using kids' art mediums. Is
That
to
was
sort
the
of,
idea.
Yeah, to draw like a kid and be experimental and like make mistakes and try to fix them.
Yeah.
So,
Go back, all the way back to that.
We both definitely did those quite a lot.
Yes.
Personally, I found that the airbrush was more of a hindrance than a help. I don't know about you.
We both got really excited about it. We were like, heck yeah, we could like do all this cool stuff with it. Then we both decided that it was really difficult and not worth it, I think.
So let us know what other traditional mediums we should use in the comments. We'd love to try maybe some adult ones or some more professional ones maybe some that weren't like Jazz's rejects that were
that
like
have been sitting downstairs for
like
years.
locked in the warehouse for so long. So let us know what you think in the comments. And most importantly, a huge thanks to all of our patrons.
If you want to join the Patreon and see all the cool, fun behind the scenes stuff and be involved in choosing stuff that we do on the channel, you can find the link down in the description below.
And an extra special thank you to our master patrons who are Time Bling,
Distinctive,
I'll Be the Floof,
Mel,
Dominic Lawson,
Slink LX,
and that's all.
hey!
And maybe you could be next.
See your name here, said by us very badly. Let us stuff your name up on camera.
Insert art.
Insert outro.
Insert outro.
Insert art out.
Nailed it.